아래 당도 세변님네 제상당하는 지금 그디 내가 공로로 제가 직대에서 말이나 공로 남산 기셔줘.
Good evening. So we're continuing to look at the training in patience. And this is an indispensable training because all too often from just a slight cause, we can explode in anger. Even if we don't fully express it, our peace of mind is lost and our mind can stay disturbed for quite a period of time. Our mind becoming obsessed with what was said or done or not said or not done. So therefore, training in patience is indispensable because when we respond in such an afflicted way, we accrue so much non-virtue. So by training well in patience, not only do we prevent ourselves from accumulating this powerful non-virtue, but we also accumulate extensive virtue. And for patience to naturally arise, we need to train our mind repeatedly over a sustained period. And for the mind of patience to be stable in the variety of unwanted circumstances that we encounter, that patience needs to be based on reasons, using our intelligence and thereby reasons. Cultivating patience in this way means that it will readily arise and be stable. And last week we looked at the understanding that by practicing patience, I will save myself from accumulating the causes for immense suffering, and moreover, I will actually accumulate the causes for happiness. So really taking this to heart develops our determination to cultivate the mind of patience, to train in the mind of patience. We also, within this last week, looked at that when we cultivate patience in response to the harm that others do towards us, that this practice of patience, the mind that stays undisturbed in the face of this adversity, enables, through the utilization of wisdom, love, and compassion, the accumulation of so much merit. Particularly, the emphasis is usually presented to compassion, to having compassion for the suffering being before us. So they are an instrument by which we accumulate great virtue. But as they were angry in relation to us, we become an instrument in their accumulation of non-virtue. So this too we looked at last week, this dichotomy, whereby we become an instrument in their creation of the causes for suffering, whereas they are an instrument by which we accrue the causes for lasting happiness. Turning to the 49th verse. Since it is me that harms them, whereas they help and benefit me, for what misguided reason do you, O vicious mind, get angry? So the 49th verse builds on the 48th, whereby we're looking at this interdependent relationship between the person who is angry at us and expressing their anger at us, and seeing the very different or contrary results that each party accumulates. So we're looking here now in the first line, since it's me that harms them. So here we are perhaps we've said something or done something, whatever it may have been, but they are angry in relation to us. So they are angry in relation to us and accumulating the causes for so much suffering. Whereas on the other hand, we, as the recipient of this aggression from the other person, through our training, the mind of patience arises. And together with this, love, compassion, and wisdom, we create so much virtue. But this person is accruing so much harm. This way of thinking is quite unusual in our world. It is the way of thinking, though, of Bodhisattvas. So they understand that this person expressing anger or rage at them, that the Bodhisattva, are part of part of the various conditions that were required for this person's anger to arise. And if the Bodhisattva were not present, that person were alone, then that crucial component in their arisal of anger would be missing, and perhaps this instance of anger would not have arisen right now. So this way of thinking from the Bodhisattva is very clearly focused on the suffering that this being before them is experiencing and the karmic causes they are accumulating. The Bodhisattva is not placing emphasis on the outrageous things that are being said to them or done towards them, but their concern is very much for the suffering mother being before them. So this is how it actually is. For example, if someone places a delicious cup of tea or coffee on a table and you unthinkingly knock it over, their mind may well be a bit uptight. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, that set them over the edge, and they explode in rage. So whilst they may have been experiencing some mental disquiet about, from whatever reason, your action was the final condition that led to the explosion of anger within. And if one had not done so, then maybe their annoyance would have been simmering, but they could have possibly calmed down without getting upset. So in instances such as that, it's very clear. Immediately one must apologize, because the suffering being before you now is in pain. They may be overreacting, but clearly you've played a part, and for that, one should, without hesitation, apologize. And so, in whatever the circumstance is, whether someone's acting towards you in an unskillful manner or speaking in an unkind manner, your presence was required for them to act in this way. So therefore, one plays some kind of part, some kind of instrument in their ripening of their anger. So thinking like this, again, as mentioned in the immediately preceding segment, places one's focus or is an expression of one's focus of concern for the suffering being before one. And if one has trained well and has developed a compassionate heart, this is how someone with a compassionate heart will respond to suffering beings. The second line presents the contrary outcome for both involved. Because for them, they are suffering and creating the causes for further suffering. Whereas for ourselves, now the second line, whereas they help and benefit me. Because it's independence on them being a ripening cause for the training that one has been putting in, cultivating the minds of patience, love, compassion, and wisdom, that it's independence on both the training one has done and this upset person before you, that one has the opportunity to accumulate so much virtue through their being an object of one's patience, of one's love, of one's compassion and wisdom. So one is hereby independence on this person and their afflicted response, their aggression towards you. Your wholesome minds are being strengthened, and thereby great waves of virtue are accumulated, and your imprints of afflicted minds, such as anger, are being eliminated. And thereby one is progressing towards Buddhahood. So this is the way that this perhaps enraged person or frustrated, annoyed person before you is actually helping and benefiting you. Someone who's trained well in patience, this is how they'll relate to others taking their afflictions out on them. On one hand, compassion towards this suffering person, but they will also see this person expressing their afflictions at them as being a source of help and benefit. And just like in society, we don't get annoyed or frustrated or angry or reject those that we recognize are helping and benefiting us, but rather we embrace them. we want to be of benefit in return towards them. The third and fourth line. For what misguided reason do your vicious mind get angry? So here, if one hasn't trained sufficiently well, one is likely not to recognize this encounter as the beneficial opportunity that it is, but rather experience it as harmful. But thinking broadly, thinking like a bodhisattva, thinking like someone who aspires to be of benefit to all beings, to all suffering beings, this is a misguided or erroneous way to relate to this same situation. So a mind that is not trained well will actually experience a situation that has the potential to be immensely helpful and beneficial, actually as something harmful and to be avoided. So recognizing that such a way or such reasoning is misguided, is erroneous, then why, O vicious mind, get angry? The 50th verse. Should my thought be of virtuous quality, I will not go to hell. Should I be able to protect myself, what will happen to them here? So now we come to a couple of verses on abandoning objections or doubts. So here the thought is, based on the verse we've just looked at, as well as what we looked at last week, looking at the interdependent relationship between the person whose mind is dominated by the afflictions, in whose mind the afflictions have arisen, and the person towards whom those afflictions are being expressed. There is a interdependent relationship between them. So here, the doubt is, so you, as the recipient of someone else's aggression, you are were one of the ripening conditions that led to this person getting angry, or one of the conditions that led to the ripening of afflictions in the mind of the other person. So as they created non-virtue, the causes for suffering, independence on you, surely you will be also creating the causes for suffering. So this then is the doubt that is addressed here. So we look at the first two lines above. In the 49th verse, since it is me that harms them, whereas they help and benefit me. Now, the objection is being presented. So as you've just said, you have harmed them. So surely, by harming them, you should pay a karmic consequence for that. Surely that is only just and fair. Because you've just said, they benefited you, but you harmed them. So surely, the karmic consequence of that, of you harming them, should be your suffering. So the answer to this doubt, we see here in these two lines. Should my thought be of virtuous quality, I will not go to hell. So what's been explained is, whilst I was a condition for their arisal of afflictions, and thereby they created the causes for suffering, and I was part of the conditions that led to creating creating causes for suffering, I did not get upset at them. I did not respond to their aggression directed towards me with even negative thoughts. And now, afterwards, I have no wish for revenge or justice, but in fact, in the very moments that they took out their rage upon me, I only had loving and compassionate thoughts towards them. I only wanted them to be free of pain and suffering, both now and in the future. So therefore, I will not go to hell because of the virtuous quality of my response, of my thought, of my response to their aggression. So this explains this response here, explains these verses that we've been looking at, in that, in this instance, someone expressed their afflictions towards you. So there is this relationship, this interdependent relationship. They are the ones who are expressing harm, but for someone to express harm, there needs to be an object, or a person or a thing, towards whom that harm is expressed. So in this illustration, then, I was the one towards whom the harm was done. But the relationship that I have with them is not similar. Because my response towards them was not one of wanting to push back with aggression, to protect myself, to harm them in revenge or in defense. Rather, my heart opened to them, and love and compassion arose towards them. So their expression of harm towards me, and I was the one for them in the relationship from their perspective, I was the one towards whom the harm was being done. Thereby, they created the causes for future suffering. But in my relationship towards them, they were a being in pain, a being who was suffering here and now right before me, and my heart opened towards them. So therefore, my relationship towards them was one of loving concern and kindness, wanting them to be free of suffering here and now, as well as in the future. So therefore, I certainly did not accumulate the causes to go to the lower realms, despite being part of the ripening conditions for their aggression. But my mind was dominated by virtue, and thereby I created the causes that will actually lead to Buddhahood. As mentioned, this in the next verse, of dealing with objections or doubts. So here comes another. So you said above that, so in the second line in the verse above, they helped and benefited me. So surely they will not fall to the lower realms, because they have been, from your perspective, a source of virtue, a great benefit to you. So surely they should not receive an undesired result or outcome from your interaction. This is very common in the text. These verses right now are presented as a dialogue between two people, a question and answer, a doubt and a response. And the third line, should I be able to protect myself? So here, the person is actually saying, I was able to protect my mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions through my extensive prior training in patience. Therefore, when this person confronted me, my natural response, because of all my training, was one of patience. In other words, with a mind undisturbed in the face of this adversity, love, compassion was naturally able to arise. So therefore, I accumulated no causes for suffering, but rather extensive virtue. So I was able to protect myself, meaning protect my mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. But what about them? Now the fourth line, what will happen to them here? In this interaction between us, I was able to protect my mind, but they were not able to protect their own mind. They were not able to protect their own mind from the afflictions, and therefore they accumulated no virtue, but in fact extensive non-virtue. And those afflictions, the karmic consequence of the afflictions is the causes for suffering and potentially rebirth in the lower realms. The summation then of this verse is that in this interaction, that whilst I may well have been, or I was, a condition for the ripening of the afflictions in this other person, in this interaction, I was able to protect my mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. Therefore, I did not create any causes for future suffering, and I was not suffering in the moment either, because my mind stayed unafflicted. And not only that, because of my prior training, I was able to give rise to virtuous qualities and accrue extensive virtue. However, this was not the case for the other person. They had not trained their mind well in patience beforehand. Therefore, in their interaction with me, where I was a condition for the ripening of afflictions within them, when those afflictions arose within them, they were overwhelmed by the afflictions, deceived by those afflictions, and thereby they suffered in the moment, and they created the causes for future suffering. So therefore, the outcome of that interaction for both of us was very different. For myself, I created no causes for further suffering, but in fact, causes for lasting happiness. Whereas the being before me, because of their mind not being sufficiently trained, created the causes for further suffering. So to take the meaning here and apply it to perhaps a very common interaction is when others speak to or about us in unkind ways. They may be speaking to us in a loud and aggressive manner, or belittling us, or being condescending towards us, whatever it may be. The way that we have learned to deal with these things in general and through society is to stand up for ourselves, to protect ourselves through strength, giving back as good as we get. And all too often if we do, and we subdue them through the sharpness of our wit or our aggression, we feel quite good about it. Or if we aren't able to dominate them and we walk away from their feeling unhappy, it disturbs our mind greatly. And then we tell other people about these terrible things they said to us, and our mind is deeply unhappy. But this is a misguided way of thinking. Maybe based on the reasons of society, but these are misguided. Such a response only leads to conflict growing, either in the moment between the two of you, or if you stay subdued, perhaps the other person has a lot of authority, you walk away there with your mind in conflict, and perhaps you struggle to sleep, but remain deeply unhappy. Moreover, through this whole process, one accumulates extensive non-virtue, strengthens one's habituation to the afflictions too. Here, the skillful response is firstly to recognize that acting in the normal way that we've learned through society is solely harmful. We should train our mind in the various reasons presented in this chapter to give rise to genuine patience, not merely staying quiet, holding our tongue, but genuine patience, a mind that is genuinely undisturbed, and therefore love and compassion can rise within you. By training in this way and responding then in this way, one not only prevents accumulation of non-virtue and further suffering, but accrues extensive virtue and thereby brings attainment of great minds such as bodhicitta and Buddhahood itself ever closer. Unfortunately, to actually be able to give rise to genuine patience isn't easy, nor is it quick. It's not just a switch we can turn on and be a sincerely patient person from now on. However, by hearing these teachings, learning the techniques, and then applying them in meditation repeatedly over a sustained period, you will improve. Your way of responding, your way of experiencing conflict will change. Train your mind based on actual lived experience of when people have acted towards you, said or done things that you have found troubling, either to you or to loved ones. Train your mind in these past experiences and think to experiences you likely to encounter perhaps later in the day. Train your mind. By doing so repeatedly over a sustained period, you'll strengthen your habituation to this way of thinking and you'll start to experience change. And by continuing to train, you will change the way you respond. So we need to be very clear that we are beginners. So here we hear about how bodhisattvas live their lives. From this, firstly, we should take inspiration, and from that inspiration then, develop a determined attitude. This is how they live their lives, and they live their life by training in the methods presented here. I'm going to do just like they have done. So this particular verse has presented a couple of doubts, and I'm going to present now a third, obviously not in the verse, but it's very common, which is thinking, but if I'm patient in the face of the adversity from others, aren't they going to just take advantage of me, treat me like a doormat? They can think they can get away with anything. For example, if they hit me with a stick and I'm passive, they'll just keep hitting me. Or if they see they can get away with speaking badly to me, they'll just keep doing it, seeing me as passive and like a doormat. So whilst this way of understanding patience is fairly widespread, it is to misunderstand what is meant by this word in the Buddhist context. Patience is a mind that is undisturbed in the face of adversity. And through the mind being undisturbed, associated virtuous qualities can naturally arise, in particular love, compassion, and wisdom. Because if the response to adversity is the usual afflicted response, one cannot think clearly. When the mind is dominated by afflictions, love, compassion, and wisdom are not going to arise. So by training in the way that's presented here, with many reasons, and training extensively over a sustained period, utilizing these reasonings, we come to understand both our own minds and the minds of others too. So we come to understand that when someone is acting or speaking in an unskillful manner, whatever that may be, they are expressing their afflictions. So these harsh words are merely an expression of their afflicted mind. That is what it is primarily about, not so much what they are accusing us of doing or not doing, whatever the situation may be. It is an expression of their suffering that is being expressed in this harsh manner. Understanding like this, by using our wisdom, means we are not taking it personally, even though they are perhaps verbally attacking us. We're not taking it personally. We recognize that this is merely an expression of their deeply suffering mind. Recognizing that this being is suffering before us, we clearly do not accept their behavior because we know their behavior as an expression of their afflictions. So we do not see what is harmful as acceptable through the practice of patience. Rather, we've come to understand that this person is suffering. Whether they are physically or verbally aggressive towards us, or trying to take advantage of us or cheat us, whatever that may be, it's just one of the varieties of expressions of a mind that is in pain, a mind that is suffering. With this understanding being well developed, one will not take what they are saying or doing personally, but will want to respond in a way so as to reduce their suffering. This is the expression of compassion, and it comes together with the mind of love, because you value this person before you, and which is associated with the love, and you want them not to suffer, which is the mind of compassion. Coming with love and compassion is the mind of wisdom or intelligence. So your intelligence is embraced with love and compassion. So your intelligence will be, how can I reduce the suffering of this being before me, this being who matters to me, this being who I care for? Then one uses, through using one's intelligence, one's wisdom, one responds skillfully, whether physically, perhaps if there's a violence towards you, you'll defend yourself. You'll try and physically subdue them, but with minds of love, compassion, and wisdom. And if they're speaking to you in an unkind manner, you may respond. But again, you're responding motivated by love, compassion, and wisdom. And if necessary, you'll go to the authorities, maybe in your place of work, or another family member, or perhaps even the police, depending on the circumstance. But all of these responses, whatever they may be, will come together with love, compassion, and wisdom, not with the afflictions. This is a practitioner of patience. They are certainly not a doormat. They will physically subdue the other person. They will say sharp words in response if their intelligence, which is unafflicted at that time, deems that that is the most skillful response to reduce the suffering of this dear being before them. Then the 51st verse. But harming them in retaliation will not lead to their protection. My conduct will also decline, and consequently so too my capacity to bear hardship. So now we're presented with a further doubt. Someone's needing further convincing that in this practice. And so they're saying, so you're telling me that you as a practitioner of patience, when others act towards you in a harmful manner, you receive benefits from their harm. Well, if that is the case, if that you receiving harm from others is beneficial for you, surely the converse is true, and you should retaliate. You should act in a harmful manner towards them, because you are saying harmful behavior somehow is beneficial. But this clearly is not the case, as we see in the second line. It will not lead to their protection. So, but harming them in retaliation will not lead to their protection. So the first two lines, the question's not explicitly stated. So what the meaning is that if I were to respond in kind, retaliating would not lead to their anger subsiding. Because if I do retaliate, they not only will their anger not subside, but it is likely to grow. The situation is likely to be inflamed. Therefore, their habituation to the afflictions will also grow. When a bodhisattva is perhaps accosted verbally or physically, they, as mentioned just before, are very aware that this is a suffering being before them. So they'll be very careful with how they respond. They will be wanting to help this suffering being before them. They will recognize that this dear person before them is creating the causes that may well lead to them falling into the lower realms. So they'll be very cautious in how they respond. They will try to employ skillful means so as to pacify this enraged mind before them. They'll do their very best not to inflame the afflictions of this person. So therefore they may well take the abuse. They may well not respond in a forceful manner, because they'll be very aware that this person is not only suffering now, but they are creating powerful causes for suffering in the future. And their love and compassion for this being will ensure that they try to, at the very least, pacify the afflictions of the person before them. At the very least, and not inflame the afflictions, and hopefully try to even pacify the afflictions of the being before them. So the dominant motivation of the bodhisattva will be, how can I reduce the suffering of this being before me? They will try and also respond in a way that doesn't further harm the relationship they have with this person. And thereby, later, when the suffering being's mind is more calm, in their normal state, the bodhisattva will interact with them in ways so as to encourage them in virtue. But in the moment where they're enraged, they will do their very best not to break the relationship, not to damage the relationship, and not to inflame it further, but try to pacify the afflictions. And later, when the person is back to their normal state, encourage them in virtue. This is not how people in society usually respond. Bodhisattvas really are quite outstanding. But we should learn not only how they respond to challenging circumstances, but why they do so that we can learn from that and try to sincerely emulate them by training in the way that they have done. Because all too often, when we are in a conflict with someone, they're expressing afflictions towards us, our response all too often inflames the situation. This is the last thing the Bodhisattva wants. The Bodhisattva will rather respond in the way to try and reduce the afflictions of the person before them. So for ourselves, we need to think well how to respond skillfully to beings when they are suffering. And also another point to make here is that all too often, with a good intention, a wish to be of benefit, to help someone, we share our views, we express our opinions. In other words, we give unsolicited advice or correct others' behavior, way of thinking, opinions, when our views haven't been explicitly sought. So this is, again, very common in society, and it often comes from a good place, wanting to be of benefit, thinking you have a better understanding of the situation, you are aware of a better way things can be done. So here one needs to take this understanding of how a bodhisattva responds to someone who's afflicted and apply it even in normal interactions where the other person isn't afflicted, but rather be aware, hang on, if I point out a better way of doing something, or if I give this unsolicited advice or corrections, do I have the right relationship with this person that right now they will receive my advice or my corrections with an open heart and be pleased to receive it? Or will they be a bit annoyed? Will my relationship with them perhaps be harmed just a little bit? Because in general, bodhisattva will be surrounded by beings who are afflicted. So the bodhisattva could continuously point out faults and corrections, but is very aware that if they do that, everyone around them will be on edge. They'll feel watched and judged. And therefore, the relationship the bodhisattva will have with the beings around them will be quite tense from the perspective of the afflicted beings. And when beings are tense, when we are tense, we are not open and receptive to the example that others set. So rather, a bodhisattva lets little things go, doesn't pay them much attention, but rather, with a far-sighted outlook, they ensure that they foster a relationship of warmth with all those around them, recognizing that if they have a harmonious relationship with others, if there is a sense of closeness between them and others, they will be able to have a beneficial impact on this person that will lead to long-term transformation. Whereas if they take opportunities to point out small errors and corrections and give unsolicited advice, other people will keep their distance, be nervous in their company, tense. And this is counterproductive to the bodhisattva who's looking to guide this person and benefit them for the lifetimes in which they will continue to be in each other's company. Look at the third and fourth line, but I'll read the whole verse. But harming them in retaliation will not lead to their protection. And then you could say, furthermore, my conduct will also decline, and consequently so too my capacity to bear hardships. So my conduct will also decline if I retaliate, if I give back as good as I get. So in other words, if I do not have a patient response and thereby my response is not guided by love, compassion, and wisdom, then not only will I, the second line, lead them to their afflictions to grow stronger, but the third line, my conduct will also decline. So this is referring to the relationship that I have with this person will be damaged by unskillful response. So therefore, my ability to express a conduct, which is like the bodhisattva deeds or bodhisattva behavior, my ability to engage in the deeds of a bodhisattva in relation to this person will be greatly impeded because I have damaged my relationship with them. So this relates very closely to what I've just said before. It's not only speaking harshly to someone or standing up for yourself, but it's giving unsolicited advice or unsolicited guidance. Giving advice and guidance or corrective behavior to someone you don't have the right relationship with, or it's not at the right time, that will harm your relationship with that person. And therefore, through the harm of the quality of the relationship with them declining, your opportunity to benefit them with your bodhisattva aspiration, that opportunity will be greatly reduced. And then the fourth line, consequently, so too my capacity to bear hardship. So capacity to bear hardship refers to my patience. So my patience will also decline, because bearing hardship means having a mind that is undisturbed in the face of adversity. What would be a hardship act one can easily bear because one is not experiencing it as such. But if one doesn't respond with love, compassion, and wisdom, then one's capacity to respond with genuine patience will decline. In the verses tonight, again saw the great benefits of being patient and used many reasons, further reasons to cultivate patience. It's coming to recognize that our response to suffering beings is greatly important. That when we are in the presence of a being whose mind is overwhelmed by the afflictions, it's only natural that will be expressed. That is how ordinary beings are. When their mind is overwhelmed by the afflictions, it comes out through their physical behavior and their speech. This, for us as aspirant bodhisattvas, if we have trained well, this then is an opportunity to express our training, to have our heart open for this person, this dear person who matters. Whatever our relationship with them, they matter, because all beings do. Recognizing that this being before us is in deep pain, the only response will be one, the only worthy response is one that will, at the very least, not inflame the situation, but ideally will help this person's inflamed mind be pacified and their afflictions be reduced. And as part of the outcome one wants from this interaction with this unhappy person is that your relationship is not harmed. It stays warm, it stays trusting, and it stays close. Because through this interaction, you know you have accrued great merit that will help the development of bodhicitta, you becoming an actual bodhisattva. And thereby, when you become an actual bodhisattva, this is a being you have a relationship with, a connection with. And if you keep that connection warm, you can be of great benefit to them. And a way to benefit others is by being a friend to them, being an example, a role model in their life, being someone that they are comfortable in your presence, happy to be in your presence, feel safe in your presence, not on edge. So these are some of the many benefits that come through training in the way presented here and developing a broad and expansive mind that doesn't take these interactions too seriously because you value something far greater, the attainment of Buddhahood for the sake of all. Then thank you. We can conclude there for tonight. Thank you.